What's up, guys? Moms.3 girls. So you're going to want to save this video. Today we're going to talk about where do I go to apply for a shelter placement for the first time? Is there a separate shelter intake site for new arrivals? What kind of shelter will I receive? Are there time limits once I'm in a shelter? If I get a 30 or 60 day notice, how can I get an extension to stay in my shelter longer? What if I have a disability? So let's get into it. Save this, share it, repost it, because if you are coming into New York City or if you are a New York City resident, unsure how the New York City intake works, let's get into it so you can find out. Okay, so where do I go to apply for shelter for the first time for placement? Great question. If you need shelter, you should go to New York City Department of Homeless Services, New York DHS, intake site. New York City DHS places people in shelter based on their family composition. So there are different intake sites for single adult men, single adult women, adult families, and families with children. The city used to operate a separate intake for new arrivals, but now everyone uses the same intake system. If you were a single adult man, you can get a shelter at 30th Street Intake Center located at 400 430 East 30th Street in Manhattan. If you are a single adult woman, you can get a shelter at Franklin Shelter located at 1122 Franklin Avenue near 166th Street in the Bronx, or Help Women Center located at 116 Williams Avenue in Brooklyn. Help Women has stairs at the entrance. So if you cannot use the stairs, you can go to Franklin. Franklin also has stairs, but there is a side entrance that does not. If you are an adult family with no minor children or pregnant people, you can get shelter at the Adult Family Intake Center located at 400 430 East 30th Street, First Avenue in Manhattan. If you are a family with children or a single pregnant person, you can get shelter at PATH located at 151 East 151st Street in the Bronx. Here is more information about the PATH intake process. What you need to know about applying for shelter at PATH. What I can tell you, you definitely need to have a residency letter where you were living for the past 2 years. Okay, so we'll get into that after. Is there a separate shelter intake site for new arrivals? No. Before, new arrivals had to go to the arrival center at Roosevelt Hotel to get shelter, but the arrival center is now closed. You can get shelter at the same places as anyone else seeking shelter in New York City. What kind of shelter will I receive? There are two types of shelters where you may be placed. One type of shelter is run by New York City DHS, and the other type is a non-DHS shelter, also known as new arrival sites. The new arrival sites include the Row, Bruckner, and Jefferson. Are there time limits once I'm in a shelter? You know me, I'll get you out in 120 days, but this is basic information, guys, not too much. It depends on the type of shelter where you are placed. If you are in a single adult or adult family in a new arrival shelter not ran by DHS, shelter staff may give you a notice of approval for temporary shelter. This notice will state that you can stay in your current shelter for 30 or 60 days if you are under the age of 23, and will provide the date on which 30 or 60 days will end unless you request an extension. If you are a family with children placed at the Row, located at 700 8th Avenue in Manhattan, you might still get a 60-day notice. If you are staying in a New York City DHS shelter, you will not receive a 30 or 60-day notice, and there is no time limit or stay as long as you comply with the shelter rules. If I get a 30 or 60-day notice, how can I get an extension to stay in my shelter longer? If you get a 30 or 60-day notice, you can request an extension to stay longer at your current shelter, and the shelter must give you more time. When it gets close to the end of the 30 to 60 days, you can go ahead and ask shelter staff for an extension. If you need more time, make sure to ask for an extension before the date printed on the notice. You can ask for an extension as many times as you need. What if you have a disability? If you or a member of your family has a disability or medical condition, you need extra support in shelter as a result, you can ask for help. This kind of support is called reasonable accommodation. If the disability is obvious or apparent, such as using a wheelchair, you do not need to get proof of a disability. If the disability is not obvious or apparent, you should get a letter from a medical provider or other paraprofessional with expertise about your disability. That explains what you need in the shelter and how it is connected to your disability. The person writing the letter does not need to be a doctor, could be a therapist, social worker, or other paraprofessional who understands your disability and the challenges that this will have. If you need more information on applying for a reasonable accommodation in the New York City shelters, please go to DHS's website.